know why those cheap flip-flops on your feet can sell for such a low price? Once you see how they're made, I bet you'd rather drop $500 on a new pair of shoes than ever touch these cheap ones again. To cut costs, some manufacturers don't even bother using fresh materials. They spend next to nothing buying piles of old, broken flip-flops from recycling centers. Some are split at the sole, some are moldy, and some reek with a nasty smell. Then, workers dump these piles into a giant grinder. Once the machine starts running, the hard soles melt under high heat, turning into a dark, gooey mess. Next, workers pour in a bunch of chemical additives, stir it all up, and suddenly this mud becomes a thick, black liquid plastic. That liquid gets poured into molds, cooled, and pressed back into what looks like brand new flip-flops. Finally, they slap on some bright dyes, package them nicely, and line them up on store shelves. You think you scored some cute, cheap sandals, but really, you're walking around in someone else's trash. People say seaweed isn't really clean because it's harvested from oceans that might be polluted, and some even worry about radiation. But if you check out how Korean factories actually process it, you'll fall in love with seaweed. In Korea, the journey of seaweed starts at sea. Workers harvest fresh seaweed from clean waters to make sure the raw material is top-notch and safe. Once it's caught, the seaweed is quickly sent back to the factory and goes through a strict cleaning process. It's washed over and over in flowing water to get rid of any dirt or extra salt. After cleaning, the seaweed goes into a big mixer to make sure every sheet has the same texture. Then it's flattened and pressed into thin, even sheets using special equipment. The sheets go into a low-temperature dryer, slowly drying them out. This keeps all the nutrients while making the seaweed crispy. Once dried, the seaweed is trimmed, inspected for quality, no broken pieces, no leftover debris, and finally packed into bags, ready to hit the shelves. The result? Seaweed that's super clean, still packed with that natural ocean flavor, crispy, fragrant, and absolutely addictive. One bite, and you're hooked. Once you see the process, I bet you'll never want to use them. You think they're made from fresh, clean wood pulp? Wrong. The raw materials are not what you imagine. They're recycled waste paper and plastic.